Perek Hey, the entire Perek Hey. This is a very important Perek, very important chapter, because up until now we've discussed the importance of Chokhmah, of studying the Torah, of having the proper direction in life to avoid the mistakes. Now he begins in this chapter, and especially the next chapter, to discuss some of the areas in life where people make terrible mistakes. So it's best to know these things ahead of time, and it's never too late to learn from our own mistakes. Several of the Pesukim, even though they appear to be discussing women, bad women, it could also be discussing apikorsut, heresy, and the like. The Pesukim are used to explain both ideas, both concepts. It begins with Perek Hey, Pasuk Aleph, Beni lechokhmati akshiva letvunati hatoznecha. Pay attention to my wisdom and bring your ear close to my understanding. He gives us this introduction that pay close attention, because he says that it's very important to anticipate certain things. And as the rabbis tell us, Eizu chacham haro'eh et hanolad, who's truly a wise man? One who sees the future, one who sees the consequences of his actions. And therefore, he emphasizes this over here, that the following ideas, the following areas in life, one has to pay close attention to well in advance, so that he should not make any mistakes. Lishmor mezimot v'da'at sefatecha yinsoru, that you may regard discretion and that your lips may keep knowledge. In other words, it's important that one have the proper thoughts at all times, and that he speak proper things. The reason he says that is because it's very possible for one to live in a world of imagination, that he imagines certain things, and as a result of that he gets himself into trouble. He says, be careful with where your thoughts are, that they're in the proper place, that they're not wandering off in places where they should not be wandering. And the same thing with what comes out of your lips, what you say. This can be a source of trouble. A person says the wrong thing, it can be misconstrued, misunderstood, it could lead him to problems. So the first thing you have to keep in mind is your thoughts should be pure and clean in the proper place, and what you say, what you talk about to people, what you share with them, watch over that very carefully. And he begins with the first example of where trouble lies. Kinofet itofena sifte zara v'halak mishemen hikah. Talking about a woman, a strange woman, not one's wife, but someone else, who's out to lure him, to seduce him. And he says that this woman, her lips drip honey and her mouth is smoother than oil. Or as we say it in English, she knows how to smooth talk him. Dripping in honey means that just like honey is very sticky, her words will convince one. It will become very sticky and very hard to let go of later on if you fall into her trap. He uses the example of smoother than oil because her words are smooth. But that's all it is. The reason why honey and oil are mentioned, because honey and oil are really opposites. And so is it with this woman, that what you see on the surface is not what you see, what she has inside. On the outside, on the surface, it may be very nice and appealing, like honey, but inside it's a whole different story. And this is going to, of course, bring about a list of problems, and we're going to discuss what those problems are. First of all, this, by the way, also applies to the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, also attempts to show us how something is appealing, and it's very sweet, like honey, but in reality, he's out to trap us. What is the end of all of this? What will happen to one who falls into this trap? The end will be bitter, like he brings here wormwood, like a bitter herb, sharp like a two-edged sword. In the end, one will be disappointed, and it will be too late, because of these women. Many times a person gets involved with someone who's not good, she will take all his money away. We're not even discussing right now Olam Haba. We're not talking about other things. We're talking about even money. Sometimes that's what a woman does. She wants to get involved with a man just for his money, And after she gets his money, she drops him. She got 50% of his estate, or whatever it is. So that's something that a lot of people, believe it or not, do not consider. And how many times has this happened and repeated itself in the history, that women went after the man's money, and after they got it? It happens. We read about it in newspapers even today. But the man fell for it, as we say, because of the smooth talk. So that's one problem, but that's not the worst problem in the world. Money comes, money goes. But there's something worse than that. Not only does she control him, but we said that the end result of this is like a two-edged sword. Shlomo Melech describes this relationship as a two-edged sword because she ruins his life in Olam Hazeh, and she ruins it in Olam Haba. That is why it's a two-edged sword. She kills him in this world, and she kills him in the world to come. As he continues on to say, Raglea yordot mavet, sheol tzeadea yitmochu. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold of Sheol. In other words, he suffers as a result of having this relationship with this bad woman. He suffers in this world, he undergoes Yesurim, and he will not be spared from Gehenom as a result of his involvement in sin with her. So this area that we can call, I guess, womenizing, or being involved with someone who one should not be involved with, is a big trap. And in this area, one not only will lose his money, as we will see later on, he can also lose his reputation, he can also lose his position. It leads him to a lot of trouble. That is how powerful this problem is. And it's misleading. In other words, you cannot know in the beginning by just looking at it. And that is why Shlomo Melech has to remind us, be careful, I'm warning you ahead of time, pay attention, pay close attention. This is one area where many people have fallen, where it's not so obvious. But you have to anticipate this. You have to look in the long term, in the long run, what are the possible consequences. And I will share with you, he says, what the consequences are. What has happened to others who have gotten involved with someone that should not get involved. Yeah.
But you always said Shlomo HaMelech fell in that same area himself, to some extent.
No, to some extent, Shlomo HaMelech himself, of course, made some mistakes. Yes, sure.
In that area, right?
Not exactly in this area, no. It's something a little bit different. But it still involves women. Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right, the next pasuk. Ora chaim pen tefales, na'u magiloteha lo teda. She does not take heed to her way of life, her paths wander, and she does not know it. That's just a general translation. But there's various interpretations of this pasuk. Ora chaim pen tefales, she does not really weigh her actions. She does not herself, this woman does not consider the consequences of her actions. She does not consider that there is life and there is death. A lot of people, before they do something, they do not consider, they do not calculate what they're about to gain and what they're about to lose. As the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot, it would be a good thing to always do before you make a major decision. What am I about to gain, or what am I about to lose if I go ahead with this? And don't rush into anything. But this woman doesn't do it and doesn't care, does not consider ora chaim, that there is a path to life. She does not weigh the pros and cons of what she's doing. And the reason for that is now magiloteha lo teda. Her path is wandering in all sorts of directions. There's no firmness. There's no tachlit. There's nothing that she's aiming for. She's just wandering around, and therefore has no clarity, and she's misguided, therefore. So she does not weigh her actions. But that doesn't mean that the man should not weigh his actions. And this is also very true when it comes to materialism. The commentaries say one has to be careful that he should not be carried away with materialism in thinking that this will bring him a lot of pleasure. And he does not see the consequences of what this will lead to in the eventuality. Because anything which is material only provides pleasure momentarily. In other words, one can see what this does to him here. But what will happen in the future, what this will lead to, how this will make him forget about his ultimate tachlit and not allow him to focus on what his real mission is in this life, he does not see that. You know, and the rabbis tell us that when a person goes upstairs and he sees how all the money that he received, millions of dollars, how that was the cause of leading him astray, he complains to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why did you give me all this money for? right? But, the money could have been, in some ways, an inheritance. It could have been a blessing. It could have been, he won the lottery because of his mazal. Money comes for a variety of reasons. And Hashem always, of course, expects one to do the proper things. It's always a test. It's a challenge. What are you going to do with the money? A lot of people have millions of dollars, but they don't properly, they manage their money with a financial advisor. They don't manage their money with a chacham. What should I do with the money? Where should I invest it? In what mitzvot should I put it in? What should I acquire? Because one does not need millions of dollars to live. And to live for his kids, you also don't need millions of dollars. Because if they don't have a good mazal, what you give them, they'll lose. They will squander in attorneys and in all sorts of bills, or they will play around with it. If they have good mazal, then even if you go and give them a penny, they will make it on their own. And that is why one rabbi did not leave anything for his kids. He says, if they are reshaim, then they don't deserve it. If they are righteous, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bless them. But his system is not accepted. According to the halakha, one should not disown any child. Even though he was not disowning his child. I mean, all he was doing is not leaving him too much money. Rabbis tell us one should never disown a child, because even though that child may be wicked and may be misbehaving, maybe your grandchild will be a tzaddik. So you're holding back something from your grandchild that he could use. But in the end, just remember, it makes no difference what you give. Depending on the child or the grandchild's mazal, he will either make it on his own, and if he does not have a good mazal, no matter how many millions you leave him, it will be squandered. It will go to waste. Alright, so that was one interpretation of Orach Chaim Pentefales, that she does not calculate her actions, she does not weigh life and death, and because of that she continues in a misguided way. Pentefales, another interpretation is that one should never think to himself that getting involved with this woman, there's a 50-50 chance that he will succeed. We're talking about something that is evil, something that is not right, and one can never say, no, it's okay, nothing is going to happen to me, I'm going to be alright, she won't control me, I'll control her, she won't take away from me the money, in other words, I'll be just fine. Don't think that you have a 50-50 chance of success. He says it's doomed to failure. One way or another, it will not succeed. And this is very, very true when one gets involved with a non-Jewish girl, or when a Jewish girl gets involved with a non-Jewish boy, as many, unfortunately, in Israel, too many, are getting involved with Arabs. And they don't have a good life. So here's an innocent young Israeli girl who thinks the guy is in love with her. Yeah, just wait. When the kids come along, and he, of course, insists on calling his kids Muhammad or Ahmed, and after a while, things don't usually work out for them, and they have a hard time running away. And same thing the other way around. When the man is a Jew marrying a non-Jewish girl, it's a recipe for all sorts of problems. They don't belong with each other, unless, of course, you're dealing with a situation where the man or woman is a true convert. There are people out there, there are individuals who have embraced Judaism entirely and sincerely, and they are on the same level pretty much as a Jew, and they are accepted. But there are not too many of those. So one has to be careful when he chooses a mate, that it be something, it has to make sense as much as possible. Otherwise, even though you're in love, that eventually disappears or dissipates, and you're stuck with something that is not compatible. The Midrash gives another interpretation about Pentefales, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu intentionally did not disclose which mitzvah gets this amount of reward. It doesn't say which mitzvot get more reward, which mitzvot get less reward, because Pentefales, in other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not want that you should choose what to fulfill, what to observe, and what not to observe. I'm only going to pick on the mitzvot that Hashem will give me a lot of sachar for it. And the rabbis bring down in the Midrash, a king who once had a big orchard hired a lot of workers to pick the fruit. And they all started picking the various fruits from the trees. At the end of the day, the king asked one worker, tell me, which fruits did you pick? I picked tangerines. He says, okay, you get $5 an hour. Then came the one who picked mangoes. He says, you get $7 an hour. So the guy who picked the tangerines was upset. He says, why didn't you tell me you pay more for picking mangoes? I would have picked mangoes. So the king says, if I had told all of you that what I pay, everybody would have worked just on the fruits that pay more. I need all the work to get done. I want all the work to be done. So I didn't tell you. Hashem says, I want all the mitzvot to be observed and fulfilled. The whole Torah needs to be fulfilled. I'm not going to tell you which mitzvah pays more. That's another interpretation of this pasuk. Ora Chaim Pen Tefalez, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu intentionally did not disclose the sechar for the mitzvot. Yeah, we know that they're not all equal. There's some that are much more significant. They're all important, but there are some that pay more. And we are also told, depending on the effort invested, 2 individuals can do the same mitzvah. One worked a lot more, and he will be rewarded accordingly. All right. Next pasuk, V'ata banim shimu li ve'al tasuru mi'imrei fi. He says, now listen to me, children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. In other words, now that you know a little bit, he's trying to say, now that you've learned a little bit, be careful that you don't make any mistakes, and those who have made mistakes, be careful that you don't repeat your mistakes. And the reason he mentions that over here, he says, because what I'm about to tell you happens, and these are problems that you should anticipate, and therefore, I've already warned you. Now you know a little bit, so listen to what I'm about to tell you. First of all, he says, as far as the woman that we just discussed, I just told you what the dangers are. Therefore, arhek me'aleha darkecha, maintain your distance from her.
How about a question?
Yeah, let me finish the pasuk first. Maintain your distance from her. Remove your way far from her. Ve'al tikrav el petach betah, and don't get close to the entrance of her home. In other words, if you suspect something is not right, don't take a chance. Just stay away as far as possible. If you get too close, I think there's a saying in English, you get burnt. What is that? Burnt, yes. What were you going to ask?
I want to say that, suppose you got involved with one of this lady,
Right.
made a mistake.
Right.
What do you have to do about it?
Then there is a procedure that one can do for teshuvah and kapara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepts teshuvah until the last day of one's life, and the younger one is, the more the teshuvah is powerful. One should not wait until the last day. First of all, he does not know when he will leave this world. And you should do it the sooner the better. But everything, just about everything has teshuvah. It's possible. The problem is a lot of people do not discover that they did something wrong until it's too late. And as we will see at the very end of this perek, that the reason for not discovering is not learning, especially not learning musar. If one would open up the book, he's basically criticizing himself. When one reads these words, it's not being told to him by a rabbi or a teacher. He's reading himself, Mishlei or Kohelet, and he's realizing where he's going wrong. So it's important to learn. So now he says, I'm warning you, these are things that can happen, and therefore, be aware of the dangers, and if one exists, maintain your distance. Because if you do not maintain your distance, what's going to happen? Pen titen la'acharim hodecha ushnotecha la'achzari. Lest you give your honor to others and your years to the cruel. Here he says hodecha. Hodecha means your honor. And this is what I said before. One can get involved in a scandalous situation. I'm sure most of you have heard of people getting themselves into a scandal of sorts. And the typical example of a scandal between a husband and wife is when one cheats on the other. It creates a big scandal. It could lead to divorce, right? Or somebody being caught doing something terrible. Just like the priests. Imagine, a priest is in a very high position. A priest being caught doing one of the most abominable acts, involving themselves with children, not even adults, children. It's incredible. I would have a hard time believing it unless I really heard testimony. It's hard to believe that a human being can do something like that. But there's a lot of sick people out there, apparently. So be careful, because you may be giving away your honor, your reputation, your name, your career. People have lost everything because of something like that. Every other day we read in the newspaper, this guy resigned. Right? Resigned for what? For just something minor. They ask him to resign. Because this, of course, does not bring what's the word for it? Respect for that position, for that job, or to that company, if somebody at the head of this company, I think it was with Boeing, was it?
CEO.
Yeah, well, when a CEO does something which is not proper.
How come
It's not illegal what he did.
Exactly, it's not proper.
How come the former president of the United States, Rabbi, he still stayed as president?
Well, the former president of the United States is an example of all the other politicians. He's just a sample, you know. He represents. It's like Nixon. You know, with Nixon they say, everybody does what he did, but he got caught. So the president you mentioned, you know, I'm sure others have done similar things. He got caught.
Why did he resign, Rabbi? That would have been the proper.
Yeah, well, that's anyway. Let's go on. So one risks losing his reputation, his money, his wife, his career by involving himself in activities of this sort. What else could happen? And we said ushnotecha lachzari. Not only can one lose so much, but his life can be shortened. Even though he was meant to live to 92, according to his mazal, but there are certain sins that HaKadosh Baruch Hu reduces a person's life as a result of those ma'asim, those deeds. So he's giving his shnotecha, his years, le'achzari, to the cruel. In other words, to death. Dying before his time. The next pasuk says, Pen yisbe'u zarim kochecha va'atzavecha bevet nochri. Another problem that can happen when one gets involved with such a woman is that others will benefit from all his hard work. As the example I gave before, either she will take away his money, or I have another example that I like to give that I think is mentioned in Kohelet. Yeah, Shlomo Melech mentions it in Kohelet. Imagine somebody working so hard all his life, accumulates money, saves his money, doesn't spend it, and what's his reason? He eventually wants to enjoy it. But he dies, and his wife remarries, and her second husband gets to enjoy all the money that the first man worked so hard in getting. And Shlomo Melech says, this is incredible that something like this could happen. But it happens. And people do not realize it. Why accumulate so much for what? Unless you put it to work. But there's a big Yetzer Hara when it comes to money. It's a very, very difficult challenge, one who's gotten a lot of money, and he needs proper guidance on how to use it. Otherwise, it just accumulates and sits there. It gives him a sense of security, but it's a waste, because anyone who's received the blessing of having millions of dollars should know that he's being challenged. What is he going to do with that? Maaser, 10%, is for the average person. Those who have millions and millions of dollars, they can accomplish so much with that money. Imagine somebody who took $100 million. He still has $200 million left. He took $100 million and he made a school in an area where there's only public schools, a Jewish school. And as a result of that school, so many kids went to Jewish school. All the zechuyot from all those kids and their children and grandchildren will go to him, to his credit. But people don't think about how to invest in Olam Haba, in their mitzvot, in that account. They're trying to see how to diversify their money in this world, which they leave before they know it. So here, one may work hard, but because of his involvement with the wrong people, she may take away his money, others may take away his money. Kochecha, all his strength is taken away. Va'atzavecha bevet nochri, and one's children could end up being in the house of a stranger. Atzavecha means also that which you worked hard on, including one's children. Because the children of a non-Jewish woman belong to the non-Jewish woman. There's no yehus. They're not like his kids. So any child that he may have had with her is not his. It's all bevet nochri, in the house of a stranger, in the house of the goy. What is that?
Unless they convert.
Well, obviously, yeah. But he's talking in general terms that people get involved in these situations, and in the end, that which they have brought in, the children who they have brought into this world are not really connected to them. It's not really theirs. Later on, if they convert, that's their own decision of what their status, of what they want their status to be.
So a man can't do tshuva for that sin, Rabbi, no?
Well, it's not complete, no. As long as the avon is there, as long as there is a reminder of the avon, of the sin, the teshuvah is not complete. Okay, next. So what happens after one finally realizes his mistakes, and he's in his mid-60s now? V'nahamta b'haritecha. V'nahamta is a very, very strong word. The English translation is, and you will groan. He doesn't say you will cry, you will feel bad, you will groan. You know what it means to groan? You will really feel terrible when your end comes. When your flesh and your body are being consumed. In other words, when a person is about to die, his days are getting closer and closer to the end, then he begins to groan. He begins to feel bad. He's disappointed. And this is what happens, Shlomo Melech tells us, to many people who have made mistakes. When they are older, they feel terrible. Only then they look back and they're disappointed. So therefore, learn Mishlei early on, so you don't have to get to that point. And what will the individual say who's groaning? He will say, "Ve'amarta, ech saneti musar v'tochachat na'atz libi." How come I hated musar, instruction, and my heart despised reproof or criticism? When I was younger, I did not want to hear or accept criticism. I did not want to hear musar. How come I did not accept it? Had I heard the musar, had I listened to the speech, had I accepted the criticism of him or her, things would have been different. Now it's a little bit too late. The mistakes have been made. What does this say? This tells us that one has to listen, at least listen to what others have to say, and weigh carefully. Perhaps they are right. Don't always think you are right. There are people who always think they're right. It's a problem, and it makes it difficult for them to accept musar and criticism. We're talking about your life here. Major decisions that can be that need to be made. Be willing to accept. In Yiddish, there's a saying: listen to what everybody has to say, even if it's 250 opinions. Listen to them all. You make your own decision. You make up your mind. Let nobody make up your mind. You make up your own, but first listen to what everybody has to say. You're only going to be smarter. Sometimes, if it's too many opinions, you're going to get confused. But we're talking about good ideas. Listen to what people have to say. You may be able to gain something from it. So here we have an individual who sees that his situation has deteriorated and it's pretty late, and he feels bad that he did not listen musar early on. Not only did he not listen musar, what is worse than not listening musar? The next pasuk is Velo shamati bekol morai velimilamedai lo hititi ozni. Neither did I listen to my teachers. In other words, I was not interested in the Torah. Did not pay attention to what the rabbis had to say. And this is how it begins. It begins by not accepting musar or criticism, and eventually one does not even want to listen to what the Torah has to say. The Torah says clearly what to do and what not to do. But if one gets used to rejecting criticism and is not interested in hearing musar, when one realizes his mistakes, it might be a little bit too late. And that's why he's groaning and feels terrible. And Shlomo Melech is reminding us, this is what will happen to many individuals out there. Millions of people in the history of mankind will reach a point in their life when they will look back and feel terrible about some action. Had I been a little bit nicer to my relative, we would have had such a much better life together. We would have enjoyed so many times together. You know when people say that? When that relative passes away from this world. I wished I would have spent more time with him. Haven't you heard that? People say that? Oh, I wish we would have spent more time together. I wish we would have done that, Don't wish, do it. That's what he's saying here. We feel bad about hurting people's feelings, and later on we can't take it back, we can't repair it, especially if we don't see them anymore. So one has to be careful. There are certain things that are beyond repair unless you catch them on time. I was almost in all evil in the midst of the assembled congregation. And what that means is that because of a little bit of enjoyment of hana'ah, I almost got myself into a lot of trouble. I could have lost my entire olam haba just because of one act, just because I was not careful, because I wanted to have the hana'ah, the enjoyment of one moment. It almost got me into a lot of trouble. Kimat ha'iti b'chol ra. But then he adds, b'toch kahal ve'edah, depending on what was done. If this was done in public, b'toch kahal ve'edah, then the action could have led to a Hilul Hashem, to the desecration of Hashem's name, which is a very serious offense. In other words, in analyzing what one is about to do, or what one did, one has to consider that if people have become aware of this, it is much more serious than if nobody knows about it except for Hashem. But there have been scandals, and that's what a scandal is, that have become public knowledge. And that brings even greater shame and a greater avon because of the Hilul Hashem involved. All right, now we go into a slightly different area. We're still talking about women, but this time it's one's wife. And this one is a lot more positive. But nevertheless, it's connected to what we just said before, that people make mistakes and get themselves into trouble. He says like this, Shete mayim miborecha, v'nozelim mitoch be'erecha. Drink water from your own well. Drink water from your own well, from your cistern, and running waters out of your own well. You know what the difference between a bor and a be'er is? A bor, he calls it a cistern, not a real well. A pit. It does not have running water. A well has running water. What's the difference? It's a big difference. The running water is fresh. There's always new water coming in. So Shlomo Melech tells us, when it comes to your relationship with your wife, you want to be careful not to go and look for something else because you're bored with what you have. It's your fault because you're not drinking out of a well. You're just drinking water from the pit. Every marriage and every relationship needs itchadshut. It needs renewal, like the waters of a well, not like the waters of a pit. In other words, one has to introduce from time to time in his own relationship with his wife a renewal, to reinvigorate the relationship. Do something to stimulate it. Otherwise, at some point, one may be tired of the other and go look for something else. So, drink shte mayim miborecha, from your own, meaning from your own wife. But remember, v'nozelim mitoch be'erecha. In order for you to preserve what you have and to enjoy it, you have to bring about renewal, like the waters of a well. And there are a lot of tactics, and there's a lot of things that one can do, ideas on how to stimulate the relationship, not just by a gift, not just by writing a beautiful card, but just doing all sorts of things to stimulate it. This is necessary. So he's giving us advice in a positive direction now on how to preserve what we have in order that we don't go look for something elsewhere. This is also interpreted on the Torah. This can be interpreted as the Torah may be difficult to learn or to acquire in the beginning, like drawing water from a pit. But in the end, after all the hard work, all the Torah that one has learned, it becomes like a living well. He's able to learn more and more at a faster pace, and even be mechadesh chidushim on his own, be able to come up with his own interpretations. Next pasuk, Yafutzu ma'yonotecha chutza berchovot palgemayim. Should your springs be dispersed abroad and streams of water flow in the street. This is a very important point, also has various interpretations. Yafutzu ma'yonotecha chutza. You want to have children of good yechus, of a good lineage, pure children. Be faithful to your wife. And in this way, Yafutzu ma'yonotecha chutza, your children, all your, your well, ma'yonotecha, your spring, will go out. Going out meaning that they will retain their yehus, they will be pure. But chovot palgemayim, they will be going in the streets like the waters that flow everywhere. It's just an idea expressing the emunim, Shabal shomer emunim lishto, that he's faithful to his wife. It brings about a blessing in his children too. That's one idea. But it's also talking about the Torah, that one who invests in the Torah, eventually Yafutzu ma'yonotecha chutza, that his Torah will go everywhere and spread everywhere and reach others all over the place. In the Sefer Hasidim, it's brought down also that this is talking about something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed to an individual. If you've received a revelation, share it with others. Otherwise, it's considered like as though you are stealing from Hashem. So Yafutzu ma'yonotecha, whatever you know, whatever you think is important to be shared with others, share it with others. Don't keep it to yourself. Next pasuk, Yu lecha levadecha ven lezarim mitach. If you follow this path of investing in your own marriage, renewing your marriage, then all your efforts, all the money, will stay with you and not go elsewhere. Remember we were saying before that one risks losing everything to someone else, but if you invest in your own relationship, then everything will stay with you. Yu lecha levadecha. You will not lose it. This is also going on, according to the Gemara, this pasuk is also talking about the Torah. There are situations when one has to teach, and when there are situations where one has to hold himself back and not teach. Depending on the generation, the time that he is in, if people's attitude are they are thirsty, they want to learn, then one has to go out of his way and give to them. Otherwise, you lecha levadecha, let the Torah stay with you, and do not go out if it's not going to be appreciated. If they're going to ridicule it. Next pasuk is a very significant pasuk. Yehi mekorcha baruch usmach me'eshet neurecha. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth. The rabbis tell us that sometimes people get married more than once. And the second relationship is not always as good as the first one, when the first relationship was a good relationship. Why? Because the rabbis tell us, En adam motze korat ruach elam yishto rishona. A man does not find complete tranquility only from his first wife, the one that gave birth to his children, the one that he spent many years with. Now, this is assuming that he had a good relationship with his first wife, right? The second one may not be as good, unless the second one is also a soulmate of his, and also spends years with him, and also has children with him. Then they create this bond. See, when a couple gets married and they don't have children, their bond is not as strong. The children bring about a stronger bond between the two of them. And that is why even in second marriages, depending of course on other factors, if there are children, the children tend to strengthen the bond. A lot of people do not divorce because there are children already involved. So children create a stronger bond. But Shlomo Melech is saying a very, very important point to people who are considering divorce. Smach me'eshet neurecha. You should be happy and invest in your marriage if this is your first wife. This is not your second or third wife. The Gemara discusses the reasons for divorce. And the halacha in conclusion really is, do not divorce your wife unless matzata bal ervat davar, unless you found something completely not tolerable according to the Torah, like she cheated on you, she betrayed you, your trust. Otherwise, just because she doesn't cook well, just because she's not clean, or the other way around, a woman should not divorce, it has to be fair, right? A woman should not divorce her husband just because, some minor, it has to be something that's intolerable completely. Today, unfortunately, people get divorced for silly reasons. And they do so because they think they might have a better relationship the second time around, especially when they know from a friend that he's doing better the second time around than the first time. Just because he's doing better, who says you're going to do better? Shlomo Melech says, and the rabbis reinforce this point, if she's your eshet neurecha, if she was your first wife, your first mazal, then min hashamayim, there was a reason why Hashem put you together. Especially if you spent 10, 15 years together, especially if you had children together. Smach me'eshet neurecha. Make an effort to be happy with her. It's up to you and up to her. Even though there are problems, you can make yourself happy if you want to. And I hear problems all the time. It's all sorts of situations, but there are some of them, not all of them, some of them are repairable. You have to do something about it. You have to stimulate it. Yehi mekorcha baruch. Therefore he says, may your fountain be blessed. In other words, invest in your own relationship. Rabbis learn from this that if you invest, if you're good to your wife, if you don't betray her, then she will not betray you. If the woman cheated on her husband, it's very possible that the husband did something against her. And it's a mirror image, as we will eventually see, kamayim apanim lapanim. So yehi mekorcha baruch, your fountain should be blessed. Invest in your relationship, and then it will pay off. Next pasuk, also very significant. Ayelet ahavim v'ya'alat hen dadeha yaravucha b'chol et be'avatah tishke tamid. Let her be like the loving, I don't know how do you pronounce it, hind? It's like a deer. Hind. And pleasant roe. Ayala is like a deer. It's in the deer family. And let her breast satisfy you all the times, and you be ravished always with her love. I don't like the translation so much, so I'm going to tell you outside a little bit what this means. There's various ideas in this pasuk. Ayelet ahavim ve'yalat hen. Shlomo Melech compares love, true love, between a husband and wife, or at least one of the components of love, as the beauty of a deer. In other words, your wife, I'm talking to all of you, but I am focusing on the men. They need to know this. Your wife has to always be beautiful in your eyes, like the beauty of a ayala. He chose this animal because this animal is a beautiful, clean animal. Because you always have to think of her, even when she's 68. She looks just as beautiful when she was 19 or 20. It's hard because some people are watching Miss Universe on TV and they're looking at their wife. This is what I'm stuck with. Look at what I'm seeing there. That's a problem. You shouldn't see these kind of things. And he's of course warning us that this can bring about problems. And don't ever compare your wife with someone else. Never. Be careful. So ayelet ahavim vayalat chen. She should always have chen and always have beauty in your eyes. You always have to see that. And every individual has some beauty. We all have a few wrinkles and maybe some white hair, and maybe we gained a few pounds. But look for the beauty. And this is a very important point, that she should always know that you think of her as beautiful. Tadecha yerabucha, in other words, that you should find love or receive love from her and don't try to get it somewhere else. You should be satisfied and be happy with what she gives you. There are some men who always run back to their mother's home because they just want their mother's cooking. Okay, once in a while that's fine too. But Dadecha Yeravucha, it should be your wife that should give you what you need. And you shouldn't have to search elsewhere, somewhere else. Ba'avatat tishge tamid literally means that in love you should always preoccupy yourself. In other words, you should invest and spend time communicating to her that you care about her. Ba'avatat tishge tamid means you should show her how much you care and you're concerned about her at all times. I like to use this pasuk. In Hebrew we say, Ani meshuga aleha. Some people use that expression. I'm crazy about her. Be'avatat tishge tamid, one has to be crazy about his wife. And the rabbis tell us, how are you crazy about your spouse? How could you be crazy about your spouse? That you don't notice any defect on her. Atalo sam lev leshum mum. Because when you care so much about a person, you don't pay attention to all the things that would disturb someone else. Ba'avatat tishge tamid. You're so in love that you even trip. And the Gemara tells us this about, there were some rabbis who were so in love with the Torah that they didn't see what was happening around them. There was one rabbi, I think it was Rabbi Silver in Cincinnati, who whenever he walked, he was so engrossed in the Torah that he bumped into a tree. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he continued on. Yeah. He didn't even know it was a tree. There have been rabbis who have gotten hurt and their fingers were bloody because of what they were doing, but they were so involved in the learning that they didn't even realize that they were bleeding. That is the idea of be'ahavatat tishge tamid. You're so in love that you trip and you make mistakes and you don't realize. You're not paying attention. Because when you're in love, you don't pay attention to all the small details. Alright. Then why should you go and be preoccupied with some other woman, with a strange woman, and embrace somebody else when you have your own wife? Why go elsewhere? Rabbis also tell us, I think it's in the Midrash, that just like a baby, when he touches his mother's bosom, he can get some milk out of it. The same is true with the Torah. The more you take from it, the more ta'am you will find in it. That is the meaning of Dadeha Yeravucha. The bosom of the Torah will always give you more and more ta'am. Even though you've learned it once, the more you review it, the more you receive from it. Another reason why the love here is compared to an ayala is it's also brought down that the ayala, this deer, even years down the road, the relationship between her and the male companion is always like from the first day, like though this would be the first day. That's another reason he compares it to an ayala. The one's relationship after 25, 35 years should be like it was the first year, like Shana Rishona. It's not always so, but this requires investment. This requires stimulation. But a lot of people therefore make mistakes in thinking that the second time around, the third time around will be better. Instead of saving their first, let's finish first. Instead of saving their first relationship, which has potential, it had once upon a time, but they may have done something wrong. And when you do something wrong and you don't repair it right away, it becomes more difficult to fix it later on. Just want to finish the last few pesukim here. Hashem is always aware of what one is doing, even though he thinks that nobody sees him. Hashem is always aware of what he's doing. And therefore, when one is punished, he's punished midah keneged midah. Hashem knows exactly what this individual deserves. Avonotav yilkeduno tarasha. The sins of the rasha will trap him. Ubechavle hatato yitamech. He will be caught in his own rope. And what that means is just like the fish are caught in a net, just like there's one trapping an animal. When one sins, he's basically trapping himself. The sins that one commits will eventually catch up to him. And finally, he finishes up the perek, Hu yamut ben musar uberov ivalto yishge. He shall die for lack of instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. This is the way he pretty much began the perek. This is what he emphasized all along, that the biggest problem is the lack of musar, the lack of Torah. That is the reason why many people make mistakes, either not accepting the criticism, the musar, not going to a shiur, not opening up a sefer, and not seeing their mistakes early on. The early one learns these things and accepts the musar, the better off he will be in avoiding many of the mistakes that people have made in their life. And what greater mistake can one make than to destroy his relationship with his wife, who he has children with? They will suffer, and they, because they saw their parents get divorced, they may get divorced too. This is what they saw in their home. It has repercussions. And therefore, Shlomo Melech warns us that be careful not to believe that you can have a better relationship with someone else. Not necessarily so. Because, first of all, what you see on the surface is not what the reality really is. And if she's your eshet neurecha, if she has put her trust in you all along, then be careful that you don't act too rashly, because later on it might be too difficult to take it back.
In that context, what you just said, Rabbi, how do we reconcile the time of Shlomo HaMelech when he wrote this? A man was allowed 2 wives. How do we reconcile your point about just
a
man wanted to take another one?
One can have up to 4 wives, as long as all the 4 women don't mind. You know, I think most women mind today, but yeah, in Latin America, some families have 12, 13 children. The more children, the better, because they help out in the house. So same thing with the wives. As long as you can afford them, right, you can have them, and they all help out. Not everybody has it easy. That is why the Ashkenazim disallowed it about 1,000 years ago. Rabbeinu Gershom.
Not what Shlomo was writing.
No, the Shlomo Melech was something else. You can't overdo it. Yeah, because that's something that I didn't discuss about overdoing. Even though we talked about the importance of spending time with one's wife, the rabbis do tell us don't overdo it, because overdoing it also leads to other problems. And if they tell us not to overdo it with our own wives, kol sheken, the more so not to overdo it with somebody else's wife, with another woman.
But does the Torah discourage having a second wife, Rabbi?
What?
Does the Torah discourage having?
No, the Torah does not clearly discourage it, but does not encourage it either. But we know of individuals who have had more than one, and they've been just fine. I just want to end with the point that, which we'll be discussing more later on in Sefer Mishlei, is that life is short, right? And as we say in Pirkei Avot, that there's a lot of work to be done, אבל הזמן קצר. The time is very, very short. And before you know it, it's gone. It really pays to learn as much as we can of all this chokhmah, Kohelet and in Mishlei, so that we avoid all these problems, and we strengthen ourselves to be able to do battle with the Yetzer Hara, because that's what happens with us all the time. We're confronted with all sorts of challenges, and if we don't have the right direction, the right counsel, then we may make mistakes that later on in life we will regret. So one of the most important sefarim that one could learn is Musar. And that is what part of Mishlei is all about. Good advice, and Musar, B'ezrat Hashem, should be able to help us lead a better life. B'ezrat Hashem.